Hail Sosatus, the infernal machine! Lucas and Alyssa turned to the voice behind them and saw an older, grimy man coming towards them. His face was stretched wide in an eager grin, and stained with sickly gray patches blotted all over. He placed his hands on Alyssa's and Lucas's chairs, and Lucas could see that they were covered in gray patches as well. Always good to see new fresh faces, the man continued. I'm Father Mason, by the way. I lead the Industrial Evolutionists. I'm quite surprised in your knowledge of us, young lady. Most come to these meetings without any advanced knowledge of the movement. But I can see that you've done your research. Alyssa smiled at him without saying a word. I'm Ian, by the way, Lucas said, breaking the silence. Father Mason smiled at him and nodded. Lucas continued, Ian James, this is Alyssa. Can you tell me more about Sosatus? I wasn't aware of this part movement. This is Alyssa. Can you tell me more about Sosatus? I wasn't aware of his part in the movement. Ah, I find your desire for knowledge quite refreshing, Mr. James. Just sit tight and listen into the sermon, and all your questions will be answered. Lucas smiled and nodded, before holding out his hand. All right, will do. I look forward to learning more about this movement. Father Mason shook Lucas's hand. As do I look forward to teaching it. It was nice meeting you two. I hope you stick around for the entire sermon. With that, he walked towards the platform, stopping every now and then to greet and chat with other members of the crowd. Once he finally stepped onto the platform, a wave of urgency swept through the crowd, silencing them as they hurried to find seats. There was very little chatter left by the time Father Mason began to speak. Lucas sat intently, listening with great interest. He could certainly see the cult's roots beginning to take form. Good evening, everyone, Father Mason's voice bellowed throughout the warehouse. I'm so glad to see that so many of you are here tonight. There are a few new faces in the crowd as well. That really warms my heart to see our little commune is visibly growing. Well, it gives this old man hope. But you didn't come here tonight to listen to me ramble. You came here because you're concerned for the future of the human species. There were a few cheers from the crowd. Lucas stayed silent and leaned back in his chair. You're here because no one else has the courage to do what we do. You're here because the governments of the world have turned a blind eye to our plight. Your cries for assistance, your pleas for attention, your worries and concerns have fallen on deaf ears. These other so-called religious movements have turned you away. They have been corrupted by commercialism, idealistic principles, and simple human neglect. We are the last hope for humanity. We do what we must do because no one else is able. Cheers sounded throughout the warehouse once again, more enthusiastic than the last. Lucas joined in as well, grinning despite it all. These people were obviously crazy. Taking them down would be no trouble at all. You are all here for a reason, Father Mason continued, pacing around the wooden platform. You have all been chosen by the great Sosatus to lead humanity in the coming days. None of your appearances here are accidental. Father Mason seemed to glare in Lucas's direction upon uttering that line. Lucas smirked, finding the irony in the statement amusing. He glanced over at Alyssa, expecting to find her cheering and shouting. Instead, she sat quietly, fidgeting with her hands uneasily. Lucas leaned over and whispered in her ear, Are you feeling all right? You look a bit on edge. Huh, what? No, I'm just a bit anxious, that's all. This is all so much to take in at once. We have the tools to forge our destiny, but yet they go unused. They sit in the corner collecting dust, only used in the most trivial circumstances. I say no more. Not since the Industrial Revolution has technology changed the lives of so many. In these coming days, I intend to drag humanity to glory, whether they are willing or not. I refuse to let our species suffer, because some people were afraid of progress. Father Mason paused, letting the crowd cheer in agreement. Despite having no idea what he was talking about, Lucas stood up and cheered Father Mason on. He enjoyed playing the part of an eager and empty-minded cultist. So Satis has given us the instruments of our future and the opportunity to put them to work. We simply provide the fuel to the fire, the manpower necessary to operate such machinery. In a way, we drive our own species forward every time we operate the infernal machine. And that is why we are here tonight. To advance the human species, we must run the machine. We must run the Sosatis machine. That is our purpose. We must feed the machine. We must feed Sosatis. We must let him complete his task. Amongst the praise for Sosatis, Father Mason removed the sheet from the object on stage, revealing a large mechanical contraption. It was a large piece of industrial machinery, a steel box full of numerous exposed turning gears and cogs. Dials and gauges lined up the side, next to a series of pistons and pipes leaking steam. Sparks danced from the loose wires, and the fog that covered the room emanated from a smokestack near the top of the machine. There was a large turning crank on the side of the machine, connected to a large sequence of gears and belts. There appeared to be an input chute of sorts near one of the ends of the device, large enough for a person to squeeze through. The apparatus emitted a muffled, humming sound. Dials and gauges lined the side, next to a series of pistons and pipes leaking steam. Sparks danced from the loose wires, and the fog that covered the room emanated from a smokestack near the top of the machine. There was a large turning crank on the side of the machine, connected to a large sequence of gears and belts. There appeared to be an input chute of sorts near one end of the device, large enough for a person to squeeze through. The apparatus emitted a muffled humming sound amidst the clinking sounds of metal smacking upon metal. Lucas sat back in his chair and examined the scene before him. The rest of the crowd was ecstatic, some leaping from their chairs and attempting to approach the machine, with which Father Mason shooed them away. The room filled with a thicker haze, and the sounds of machinery appeared to grow louder as the crowd's combined voices rose. Alyssa sat back, eyeing the machine on stage curiously. Lucas was a bit concerned about the machine's purpose, but tried his best to hide it. These people were harmless so far, but he worried that he knew the exact purpose of the machine before him. Despite this, he resolved not to break his cover, no matter what happened next. If these people really were dangerous, then he needed to play his cards right. "Not what you were expecting, huh?" Lucas turned to see Alyssa grinning wryly at him. "Ian, I like you. I know you're new to this, but I really think you should leave. Some things are going to happen in the next few minutes that you want no part in." Lucas looked at her quizzically, afraid at what she was getting at. Nonetheless, he had to stay. "Are you kidding? Just when it's getting interesting? No way, I need to know more." Alyssa hesitated and then shook her head. "There are forces at play here beyond you or me. You want no part in their quarrel." Before Lucas could respond, Father Mason began his speech again. "And here he is, Sosatis, the infernal machine. Who among you, my brothers, is worthy of joining him? Who among you wishes to feed the machine? To use your body as a driving force in humanity's evolution? Who among you wishes to throw your body upon his gears and into the pits of eternity?" Numerous figures in the crowd shot up, raising their hands and begging for the opportunity. Lucas sat still, breaking into a cold sweat as he dreaded what was going to happen. Father Mason gazed around the room, pointing to various followers, and then shaking his head. After about a minute of this, he held up a hand, urging silence, and continuing his sermon. "I appreciate your eagerness, my brothers, but tonight is a special occasion. You see, There is a special guest among us. So Satis has sent us a body. There were hushed murmurs among the crowd. Lucas kept his down and his eyes fixed on the machine, trying to avoid suspicion. He was confident that he hadn't been detected. It wasn't possible. There was no way they could have detected him, right? Father Mason paced around the platform before settling down behind the podium. He gazed directly at Lucas as he spoke. Yes, this person may believe that they have infiltrated our inner sanctum, but they are only here because so Satis wills it. This person has been sent to us to serve not only as fuel to the machine, but as an example. To show that we are not a force to be trifled with. To show that so Satis holds the power. To show we are the future of humanity. Lucas gulped and looked around quickly, searching for the nearest exit. There stood around 30 people between him and the door. If he made a dash for it in the next few seconds, he might have a chance. He turned to stand up, only to see Alyssa had risen from her chair as well. She moved in his direction, brandishing a sizable pistol in her hand.